Every morning, you check yourself before you check the world. Somewhere a message is waiting, and so is your fear of what they'll think. You walk in like everyone's watching. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. One path is easy, the other is honest. You always seem to pick easy. Sarah had a shot at the promotion she'd wanted for years, but all she could hear were the voices she imagined judging her. So she said nothing, and the moment passed her by. Mike built something with his own hands, and something he was proud of. But at dinner, he stayed silent, afraid of what his family would say. Failure hurts once. But judgment? Judgment we replay forever. Where does this fear even come from? He needed to understand it. It started young, in a hallway, in a classroom, in a moment he never forgot. One laugh, one moment of being different, and the fear took root. We don't fear judgment randomly. We fear it because once it hurt. Sarah saw it too, a memory she'd buried for years. A stage, a mistake, a room full of eyes that felt too loud, but that was one moment. It wasn't who she was. Mike stared at what he'd built, proud yet still unseen. He remembered who he used to be before he started shrinking to fit in. Somewhere between then and now, he'd stopped showing up as himself. He had a chance to put himself out there, just one click away. But in his mind, 1,000 strangers were already judging him. So he closed it, safe, unseen, unjudged, and unfulfilled. Walking home, he realized he wasn't protecting himself. He was hiding. Sarah decided to do something different. She told someone the truth, and instead of judgment, she got something she didn't expect: understanding. Mike showed up anyway, even with his hands shaking. Not everyone stopped. Not everyone cared. And that was okay. He stayed. He adjusted. He didn't pack up and leave. Somewhere between fear and courage, something in him was starting to shift. The next day, he sat down again. Same table, same fear, different choice. This time he pressed submit and let the fear come along for the ride. Nothing bad happened, just quiet, and something close to peace. Sarah stood up in that meeting, voice shaking, but she stood up anyway. No one laughed, no one judged. They just listened. She realized the fear had been louder than reality ever was. Mike showed up again, and this time someone stopped. A stranger believed in what he built enough to pay for it. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen and surviving it. One small act of courage doesn't erase fear, but it does shrink it. The rejection came, the thing he feared most, finally here. He braced for the old crash of shame, but it didn't come. Just disappointment. Survivable, ordinary disappointment. Sarah started helping someone else find their voice, because she remembered what it felt like to have none. Helping someone else made her own growth feel real. Mike finally gave his stand a name, proof he believed in it. At dinner, he spoke about it without shrinking. His father's hand on his shoulder said more than words could. And the man who once feared every judgment opened a blank page, unafraid to be seen. Work started to feel different, less like hiding, more like building. He started showing up to rooms he used to avoid, and instead of staying silent, he spoke. People didn't judge him. They just listened. Sarah stood in front of a full room and didn't flinch. The applause wasn't loud, but it was real. Mike's little garage idea had grown into something bigger. Strangers gathered, curious about what he'd made. At the end of the day, tired but full, not empty. Back on that same bench, he wasn't writing questions anymore. He was writing answers. Then came the opportunity he never expected. Old fear crept back in, whispering all its familiar warnings, but this time he recognized the whisper for what it was, just noise. Sarah was offered something she once thought she'd never deserve. She sat with it. Not with fear this time, but with quiet certainty. She said yes, not because she wasn't scared, but because she was ready anyway. Mike's small stand had caught someone's attention, someone who wanted more. A handshake sealed what months of showing up had built. He called his father not to prove anything, just to share the joy. And the man who once feared every judgment typed back 2 words: I accept. He stood in front of more people than he ever had before. Someone challenged him, publicly, exactly what he used to fear most. He answered honestly, even the parts where he didn't have all the answers. And the room respected that more than perfection ever could have. Sarah led her first meeting as someone others now looked up to. She noticed a quiet teammate holding back. just like she once did. So she made space for them, the space she once wished she'd had. Mike walked into a shop and saw his own product sitting on a real shelf. A stranger picked it up, with no idea Mike was standing right there. He didn't need credit. Just knowing it mattered was enough. An old friend sat across from him, someone from before all of this. "You've changed," his friend said, and for once, that felt like a compliment. He didn't feel like a different person, just a more honest one. Sarah stood at a company event, recognized for work she once feared to attempt. In the crowd, she saw someone nervous, someone who reminded her of herself. So she walked over because someone had once done the same for her. Mike stood in front of a storefront with his own name on it. His family arrived, seeing for the first time what he'd built. His father hugged him, not because of the store, but because of who he'd become. And the man who once gripped a bathroom sink in fear stood tall in that same spot. He kept writing, not to escape his fear, but to understand it. Sarah watched the sunset from the same office where she once shrank. Mike locked up his own store, alone and completely at peace. None of them stopped feeling fear. They just stopped letting it decide. 3 different lives, one same choice, to be seen anyway. The man sat under that same street lamp, but he wasn't the same man. Judgment didn't disappear. It just stopped being the loudest voice. He walked forward, not fearless, but finally free. Because the real failure was never being judged. It was staying invisible to avoid it. You just watched someone stop hiding. But here's the harder question. What if the thing holding you back isn't fear at all? What if it's the opposite? Trying too hard to prove you're not afraid. That's the video for next time. Same guy, different trap. Hit subscribe because you're going to want to see how this one ends.